In this video, we are going to be going over the tape method. This is my preferred method of in ironing perler beads. This gives you that pixel perfect look. So as you can see here, I'm putting the tape over the perler beads, and I'm going to be attaching it to the pegboard, make sure it doesn't pop up or anything and move my beads on accident, otherwise you'll create a mess. And then I overlap the next piece of tape just barely over the first piece. And so once I get that set, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab that roll of tape that I have, and then I'm going to roll it over the beads. This is basically making sure that each bead that's underneath the tape is attached to the tape itself, so that way when I actually pull it up, it'll stay there in position. And so once we get this done, we're going to move on to poking all of the holes. So I like to do this with a pen that has like a good rounded edge tip there. So that way it actually pokes a full hole in each circle, or bead in that case. And so I just like to go along the edge here. And then once I finish the edge, I poke all of the holes in the middle. And so the big reason we're doing this is to help the heat breathe all the way through the bead. And so it'll give us that even melt once we get to the end there when we're using the iron. So we'll go ahead and watch this go through. I'm just going to show everything to its full on the whole process, just so you can see I don't skip anything, I don't do anything special, nothing else is done. Okay, and then what we're going to do here is once we finish poking all of the holes, you want to give it a good look over, make sure you actually poked every single one, because if you missed one, we'll show you an example of later on what happens if you miss poking a hole. It'll actually leave a hole in your creation. So go ahead and grab the tape, but make sure to grab all the pieces of tape at once so it comes off in one clean pull. So there we go, and we'll flip it down. And then we're going to put the parchment on top of it. In this case, it's just standard parchment cooking paper, non-stick, of course. So we'll cut it to size, and then we'll just place it over the top. I like to keep my pieces pretty big, quite bigger than the creations themselves. And then I grab my iron. I always tend to have my iron set anywhere between 3 and 4, so it's good medium heat. And then once we get going, we'll just do circle motions. Circle motions are the key. And so we'll just go through this whole process. This will, last a couple minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. So as you'll see here, I just keep going in circles. Circles, circles, and more circles. And once we get towards the end, you'll see the beads start to melt, and then I may switch that to a top and an up-down motion. So we'll just go from top to bottom across the creation. I mainly just do that to kind of just help spread out the beads if any of them aren't quite up to that square look yet. And then I'll just go right back to the circle motions. I try to spread out the heat as evenly as possible on all the beads as much. But you'll quickly find that when doing perler beads, the more dark colors that you have in your perler bead, the harder it is to get that pixel perfect look. You just have to spend more heat, and more heat can end up to too many problems. So if you put your iron at way too high of a heat, you're going to end up with some problems. So best thing is just practice it, give it some, some goes, make some small creations, get the understanding of, what iron setting you like, how much heat you like, the process of how long it takes and whether this is something you'd like to do. I definitely do, just because of how it looks in the end. Another thing of note, I also like to change the angle of which I'm ironing those circles with. So I do this to try and differentiate where I'm applying the primary section of heat. I tend to, if I just do it from the center, only the center is getting the majority of the heat rather than all of it. So I'll move the iron up and do circles towards the top, and then slowly do smaller circles towards the bottom. The case in the one on the right, that object is, kind of a circle shape, so it's a bit hard, but there you go. I'm doing the up and down motions, so top to bottom. I'm kind of just helping spread out those beads, give them extra oomph and, they're going in the right direction of how I want them to look. And then I just go right back to that circle motion. And we just keep going until I feel like I can see through the parchment paper that it's done to the quality that I want it to be done. So one thing you will notice is when you are finished, you will want to pull off that parchment paper in one clean motion. So typically what I'll do is I'll grab like the edge of the parchment paper, lift it up, put my fingers on the tape so I'm holding it down to the table, and then I'll peel the parchment paper off in one swift motion. Obviously a bigger project, it's a little bit harder in one swift motion. So there you go, right there, one swift motion. If you don't do that, you'll end up with a crease, and you'll see that in an example here. But then you just, once you're done, pull the parchment off, put an object on top of it. In this case, I like to use just a good, heavy book. Doesn't have to be anything too big. But here's the examples. If you don't pull the parchment off in one clean motion, you'll actually get that crease across the top. Whereas you can see that one doesn't have that crease. That's because I pulled it off correctly. The other one I did not. I accidentally either hesitated or it slipped out of my hands. Not sure which. But there you go, one swift motion. And there on the right, you can actually see where if I forgot to poke that hole. For some reason, I missed that hole. And then when I finished ironing the project, the hole actually won't close up. And that's what you end up with, is a giant hole in your project. So, like I said, once you done ironing, you place the book on top, and then you come back about 15, 20 minutes later, or tell it's as cool as you want it to be cool, and then you pull the tape off. So, I mean, if the object is still too warm, you could end up stretching out the perler beads as you pull the tape off. So you'll definitely want to let it cool down enough to where you won't stretch it all over in random directions. And that's it. That's all there is to it. So here's me just placing down a bunch of random creations that I've created over the year, and their pixel look. So you can see how square and everything is, and nice, and versus that pixeled hole look. That's pretty standard if you iron everything on the pegboards, which I just don't like to do. Don't got anything against it if that's your choice, but this is the tape method. So thanks for watching, and have a good day.